So in this one I started off by pasting the been received from the benefit fund. And the doctor wrote back and said, not a bloody sausage. I thought that was priceless. And then you get another thing like this.
Called the Newcastle Book Book. Over the past 40 years, the staff have kept everything from their old Victoria Theatre tickets to letters from clients, including one from a worried farmer who couldn't build a fence strong enough to contain a bull on agistment. Even public trust officials couldn't handle that one. This reply came from a doctor who was asked if he had received his fee.
Go mad because you're listening to people's troubles all
time as a public trustee in Newcastle. The last 7 years have
got to
been as
work
branch
them out the
manager.
best way. We try
Today
to
he
get
spent his last day
say
at
a
work
few
filing
words.
a tribute to the
So that's the this is the new despite how silly they sound to you.
Called the Newcastle Book Book. Over the past 40
priceless.
years, the staff have
And then
kept
you get
everything
another.
from
I
their
thought
old
they
Victoria
preserved it in their old
Theatre
batch.
to letters from clients, including
this
one
was
from a
the
worried
whole
farmer
idea of it.
who couldn't build a
You can
fence
see
strong enough
throughout.
to
After
contain
I
a
finished,
bull
I
on
was
agistment.
surrounded by people.
Even public trust officials
I
couldn't
thought
handle
that was
that one.
priceless. And then you get
This
another thing
reply
like
came
this,
from the doctor who was asked if he had received
medical
his
benefit.
fee.
And he wrote back and said, not a bloody sausage.
Once Mr Harvey was called in to administer the estate of a sailmaker who
I've
didn't like keeping
really
records,
please
but left
advise
behind
whether any
30
payments have
unfinished
yet
sales,
been
some for
received
overseas
from the
customers.
benefit fund. Waited
And
out,
it
waited
seems
for
there's
another
no end to the
customer.
places people will put their wills.
signed a
The
will.
search by relatives
Two
can go on
witnesses
for
were
months,
there.
but sometimes
They
it pays
completed
to
the
remember your
execution.
friendly butcher.
And this lady said to the butcher, well, what'll I do with it? And he said, well, there's nothing safer than my cool room. I'll put it in there for you. And I think
So
that's what this
45
office is
years
all
of
about.
handling the public and its
You've got
problems,
offices all about
how do
it.
you survive?
You've got to be serious because it's a serious business. But if you don't have a little bit of humour, well, I think you'd go mad.
Precisely, maintenance crews are preparing Mirage fighters for takeoff. The jets are on full alert all night, ready to scramble if another UFO sighting is reported, either on Sydney radar or here. The mystery objects are said to reach speeds of up to 3,000 kilometres an hour. At best, Mirage pilots might be able to take photographs. The RAAF has been speculating about the mystery objects.
Well, there's plenty of speculation, of course. Some of it fairly wide-ranging, and we haven't come up with any definite conclusions on their speculations.
So what happens if you do get another sighting?
If we get a confirmed sighting on our own radar, we'll scramble the aircraft in an attempt to make a visual sighting.
Such a scramble takes 2 minutes. Pilots change over at hourly intervals during the night, taking up position in the cockpit. Strapped into full flying gear, they sit and wait on the cold tarmac. The RAAF says it will continue the procedure each night for the time being.
Little athletics is a sport growing in this state, and according to Kerry Anderson, that's because it's fun and non-competitive. After 14 years, there are now 34,000 enrolled in the association, an increase of 6,000 in the last 12 months. As Education Officer, Mr Anderson travels to schools throughout the state, hoping to interest 6 to 13-year-olds with films and talks. The association has developed its own methods and equipment especially for children, like this lightweight rubber discus and these easy training books. I asked Mr Anderson, in what ways do children benefit personally?
I think the kids, basically, they build up a friendship with other children. They build that bond of sportsmanship because it's being an individual sport, The level of competition in little athletics is very, very low key. So in other words, they're competing against themselves. They go down for the companionship. A lot of them only come down to little athletics for Saturday morning because their mate's there.
No No Nanette is one of those musicals that relies entirely on bright and energetic performances. It has a wafer-thin storyline, a pleasant but not outstanding musical score, and a few funny lines, most of them given to the minor character of the maid. Torres has come up with a production that looks absolutely great, but which suffers from a great lack of performance and vitality. From the outset, performances were only too soft, many lines were delivered hesitantly, and the pace was too slow. They should rush and stay instead they came almost unapologetically and muttered a few off-the-cuff remarks. Mind you, I don't blame them. It's the director whose responsibility it is to orchestrate such things. The chorus members fared better in the big production numbers because they were sure of what they had to do, thanks to Amelia Hall's excellent choreography. Uncertainty pervaded much of the production, although the principals, Deborah Fisher and with the two women best capturing the style of the film. On the subject of style, I thought that the high-handed approach to the trio of girls in the north just didn't really suit. As I said, No No Nanette looks absolutely terrific, with probably the best costumes I've seen on the Newcastle stage. Now it needs confidence and vitality to match it.
The marchers began their rowdy walk shortly after noon, having started from the Aboriginal co-op opposite their apartments. As well as Aboriginals, whites, unionists and university students moved in one eastbound lane, escorted by police. When they arrived at the mall, the marchers interrupted a fashion parade, part of an American Independence Day promotion organised by the Kern Corporation. The rally went ahead as planned, despite the music of the promoter's PA. Some marchers were offended by the display of American flags and by white actors playing coloured people. After a discussion between an Aboriginal organiser and the Kern's promotion manager, Bruce Gates, the stage was made available for the rally.
Bruce, how do you feel about what's happened here today?
In harmony with an Aboriginal theme if he'd been approached earlier. The Awabakal Co-op said it was pleased with the turnout.
Parramatta Hospital's Westmead Centre. Some say it is the showpiece of modern Australian medicine. Its step-like design symbolises the advances being made in modern medicine, not the least being in the field of cancer treatment. Its radiotherapy section is the second largest in the state and one of the most modern in the country. Completed in 1980, the department has 4 linear accelerators or cobalt machines and is waiting on its 5th. The department treats 100 patients a week from a catchment area of 1.3 million people from Sydney's western suburbs. It's one of 9 cancer treatment units in Sydney. This may appear to be excessive, but considering 1 in 4 Australians will suffer from cancer during their lifetime, and these units service the entire state, their existence is more than justified. Professor Langlands is in charge of the radiotherapy section at Westmead. He says a proportion of cancers can be cured, but it's the failures that have the doctors baffled. So what are the success rates?
It varies very considerably from tumour to tumour. Doctors are now talking confidently about 100% success rates in certain forms of testicular cancer. In my lifetime, I have seen Hodgkin's disease go from a disease that was generally considered to be incurable to one in which we expect to cure 90% of patients. Very dramatic changes have occurred in the treatment of tumours of childhood, where leukemia, previously 100% fatal, is now cured in perhaps 50% or more of patients. There is bad news too. Common tumours like cancer of the lung give extremely poor results, and very little progress has been made in the management of that disease.
Planning is an important phase of patient treatment. Once the cancer has been recognised and the extent of the problem has been established, the search for a solution begins. Doctors now believe synthesis of the three main forms of treatment is essential if the cancer is to be cured. These are surgery, chemotherapy or the use of anti-cancer drugs, and radiation therapy.
Historically, there was a situation where we tended to treat by surgery or radiotherapy. Now we're trying very hard to synthesize that which is best in each form of treatment to give the best treatment for each situation.
Radiotherapy is becoming more prevalent in the treatment of tumours, for although it may not always cure the cancer, it has a secondary role in controlling the symptoms and increasing the patient's quality of life. This simulator allows the radiotherapist to plan the patient's treatment. It does everything a linear accelerator can do except emit the rays. Laser beams are used to work out reference points, and marks are drawn on the patient, or in this case on the immobilisation mask, for future treatments. Once the patient is reassured, the radiographers leave the room and X-rays are taken. This is the first stage of planning the radiotherapy. The information is then passed on to the planning radiographers. Their lives have certainly been made a lot easier. This used to be the way the effects of the rays on both diseased and normal cells were worked out. But now it's all done by computer.
It's reduced in scale, of course, by a fixed factor.
Cutting the time from 3 hours to 10 minutes. From this printout, the radiologist can chart a course of treatment for his patient.
The radiotherapist then decides whether this is adequate for his purpose. If it is, a prescription is then written for the treatment of the patient, and the patient goes into the next stage, which is treatment on one of the machines in the department.
The treatment isn't painful, but a clinical atmosphere can make the linear accelerator seem more forbidding than it need be. And that's what the staff at Westmead wanted to steer away from. Another added comfort is the microphone, so that the patient can communicate with the outside world. And the TV camera reassures the patient that there really is someone looking over them. Westmead Hospital has the newest radiotherapy section in the state, but the people of Newcastle and the northern districts have the closest affiliation with the radiotherapy section at the Prince of Wales Hospital. The people of Newcastle and the northern districts who are suffering from cancer have to come to Sydney for treatment. 280 cancer sufferers come to the Prince of Wales each year from the Hunter region. They may have to stay for up to 5 weeks with 1-minute treatments each day.
The oncology,
although they know it could be saving their lives, it's a disruption, it's frightening and it's worrying.
It's very difficult with 2 young children who worry whether they're going to be all right. When they get colds, you're worrying whether they're being looked after, and their father looks after them very well, but it's not the same as being there yourself.
The establishment of a radiotherapy department in Newcastle won't wash away all the fears, but at least it will lessen the burden for patients like 82-year-old
the oncology,
from Toronto.
well, I'd hope to be there to cut the ribbon with Sister Constance Casey.
And that's why he's looking forward to the opening in 1985.
Well, I'd hope to be there to cut the ribbon with Sister Constance Casey.
The head of the radiotherapy section at the Prince of Wales Hospital, Professor Kevin Mead, says it's vital Newcastle makes sure it has the best equipment available. But he says the only way a full cancer treatment unit can work is with a team effort.
It's essential to have a complete team approach, by which I mean you have consultations with the surgeons, medical oncologists and radiotherapists, and come to decisions as a joint committee rather than in isolation.
The Chief Executive Officer of the Mater Hospital, Mr. Ralph Watson, has been scanning the country looking at radiotherapy units.
What we're looking for is to get the best combination of treatments and service for people in the Hunter Valley. And what we are trying to do is take the good parts of units in Sydney and in other states and utilise that experience and knowledge and expertise for Newcastle.
Sketch plans for the radiotherapy section of NewMed 2 are nearing completion, and within 6 months the orders will be placed for the much-awaited equipment. After years of battling, NewMed 2 is going ahead. The Minister for Health, Mr Brereton, has pledged his support, promising to finance the construction of the building. But he has called on the people of Newcastle to equip the radiotherapy department. They took up the challenge with gusto, raising $1.75 million in their telethon. The costing and planning for the department should be finalised next month. So, with the likely appointment of a medical oncologist to administer the chemotherapy, Newcastle should have its own cancer treatment unit by 1985.
Here, subject to the local people being able to use
were on the site intending to block the work. A confrontation was avoided when no work was attempted because of rain. Wyong Shire Councillor Paul Levick was at the meeting after being telephoned by several residents yesterday afternoon. The DMR had only notified the council about the 5-month road closure that afternoon, and residents had first heard the news on a local radio station. A section of the road, which is the main access for residents, needs reconstruction because it is sinking onto the neighbouring street. It's closing has a 20-kilometre detour for locals. Councillor Levick promised that Wyong Shire Council would telex the DMR in Sydney, requesting the road remain open to local traffic until a bypass can be built. By late this evening, there had been no word from the department.
Also have to hasten to add that the rest of us have, but the important...
Mr Peter Rundle, Mr non-standard Mr Joe Sweeney of NBN. One of the outgoing directors is managing director of Jay's
like
Travels,
many organisations I've been in, very much Jim for your efforts. The second one, Jim's been a tower of a very insightful...
is Mr Clem Varley. Mr. Barley told the meeting that the Chamber should
Noticed
expand
doing
its
your
regional role
report
to look at
and
the whole of the
doing
Hunter.
on demands,
Mr. Barley
and say what
reflected
a
that he
delight it
became
has been very
president in a time
saying
of
that
boom and
presidents
saw the
come and
recession
go, but
crowd in.
secretaries this year.
But he has noticed a small glimmer for Newcastle.
Sheriff, I think this taxation office is a particularly good one. It's a great employer of skilled people, and I think that's what we need. We're too short of government department offices, head offices. Private companies ought to get off their tail and do something also about having major offices in Newcastle, and I think that's a great thing, a great mix for Newcastle.
Thank you.
The search for 27-year-old Derek Frew continued off Port Stephens today as the rescuers were unaware that he had drifted so far north. When the search involving civilian and RAAF aircraft and the Navy vessel Wollongong resumed, hopes of finding Frew alive were fading. His survival seemed unlikely because the seas in the Port Stephens area had been rough. A radio signal from Frew was picked up by volunteers at Nelson Bay at about 8:30 on Friday night. He said that his engines had failed and that he would try and drift into the bay. In the early hours of Saturday morning, Mayday calls began coming in from him, with the last one being received at 4 a.m. But against all odds, the 27